welcome to an edition of our show. My name is Business. As we always say, business means money. Stability and business, and a lot more mean a lot of money. And we've been facing worldwide, I mean, not only Egypt, the whole world, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, and then the variant that came out of it, Omicron. And we don't know what's going on, what will happen. So lots of questions that we're going to be asking, and what happened. And as we are starting the new year, what happened last year? And based on that, what will happen? So let me just say Happy New Year. Always being positive, and the positive vibes will happen, and everything will be great with the positive vibes. I'm Nermin Nazim, and with us is our guest, Mr. Osama Mourad, who's a finance and economist specialist and analyst. Welcome, sir, with us.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and all the audience.
And there is a lot to talk about, but we'll go for a short break. After which we'll be coming back. Stay tuned to us. Don't go away. Back with our guest, Mr. Osama Mourad, who is a finance and economist, actually. Welcome, sir, again.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know how to start, because there is a lot to talk about, definitely, but, you know, what we've been facing, and the economies of the world are reeling under the repercussions of the COVID-19. Yet, well, let's start with the, globally, and then, you know, narrow down, you know, go into Egypt.
We have seen in 2021 a different phenomenon than in 2020, the year where COVID started, where we saw that COVID continued and as a pandemic, but however, industrial demand and production started to increase, especially during the first half of the year. During the second half, which is very significant, we have the semiconductor issue, where the Chinese producers of semiconductors obviously had stalled, not announced, so there is a global shortage of semiconductors, which is affecting the automotive sector, as well as all electronic appliances, mobile phones, TVs, and so on. So that's creating lots of shortage. But we have seen a reasonable growth in Europe, 2.2%, in Egypt with 3.3%, which is for Egypt weak. We normally grow better, but still shows Egypt's resilience to the pandemic, and we have seen that elsewhere globally. Actually, we all forecast that we will see higher production, higher demand, but it will also cause global inflation. That's why central banks around the world are also raising interest rates, and we expect the same to happen in Egypt, which puts a lot of pressure on the economy because we are on the growth phase. The state has immensely invested in the infrastructure as well as production facilities. We've seen the closing of the year with a fantastic week of opening of factories, production facilities, infrastructure in Upper Egypt by the president himself. And also for Egypt, very significantly, we have seen the president's acknowledgement of that the private sector needs to be more present, and he's welcoming and opening up, suggesting the private sector not to be afraid and participate and share with the state. Globally also, we're seeing a different era where there is a transformation from the brick and mortar economy to the knowledge-based economy to online to e-commerce. So we've seen the businesses which benefited, lots of companies which operate in the virtual space. Actually, there are now virtual worlds by several companies where people buy and invest, even in real estate, virtually, buy virtual art, buy virtual assets, and so on. So it's a change in mindset. Education is a sector which dramatically got affected, whereby we are transforming from the traditional schooling, in-class schooling, to either a hybrid model, like in Egypt part-time, or to a full online model globally. This caused also a shift in employment and in the employment supply and demand, which is partly also one of the problems in Egypt, unemployment. It's still under control, but always will face a challenge. If we move to Egypt, our export-oriented GDP contributors have been drastically affected, being tourism, the Suez Canal, and exports, but local production and demand has come up with the remainder, but might cause pressure on the foreign exchange of the currency in 2022.
Okay. What about the export? I think, like with the situation of the COVID-19 in the beginning, then some countries' productions, agricultural productions, just went down, and well, Egypt just went up in other spheres, and
Yes.
like production, actually export of produce and things like that's more.
Well, we don't have a lot to export currently, even if prices go up. We are growing on the agribusiness sectors, but in other sectors we're not. And we are also growing on the imports, especially on food supplies. So this faces a lot of demand. But the significant issue is this transformation of the demand of the state and infrastructure on oil and petroleum based. We transformed most of our electric facilities to gas operated instead of diesel and mazot, which creates less pollution, but more importantly, it does not need to be imported, it's locally produced. With the ring road being transformed to a smart road, with the highways being there, fuel consumption will go down. With the hopefully opening of the metro lines and also the monorail, this will facilitate transformation. In Egypt, we also have now the global largest player of e-commerce, having a logistics hub opened by the Prime Minister in Egypt, which not only facilitates local trade and distribution, but also has opened up businesses for logistics and supplies. We've seen many startups coming out of Egypt, working and being able to raise money, but also gives an opportunity for Egyptian exporters, which are not large, especially the small and micro, to go ahead. There is lots of focus from the state on small and micro businesses and on women empowerment. Especially we have the Haya Karima Dignified Life initiative, which is able to support the social classes which have been drastically affected. Corona did not impact Egypt in a lifestyle way, because we took different measures than other countries, which turned out to have the same result. So there is no harm in that we did not close down drastically. There is no scientific reason till now, evidence why we are not affected dramatically. But the main issue is tourism, because people are traveling less. Some countries are closing down travel again, which you've seen, some Arab countries, some European countries. So there's limitations on travel. You need to be double vaccinated, triple vaccinated. You need to have to your PCR test.
Which is expensive, doing that, like double the...
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very expensive and puts a burden on the states also, because all states have taken the responsibility to vaccinate the people for free. So it's causing lots of budget constraints. Also in Egypt, I would say that the reform being done now, which is on the economic and restructuring phase, on the tax system, everything is moving to electronic billing. Your tax is applied and paid electronically. Lots of government services can be done electronically. We have an excellent government portal, which is Digital Egypt, or Masr al-Raqamiyya in Arabic, where you can do most of your services to make life easier, and also to have less pressure and less crowds in the government offices, to lessen the burden of traffic and also of the epidemic growing faster.
Definitely. Well, we go for a short break with a report on the petroleum sector. Stay tuned to us. Don't go, we're not. We're coming in a moment.
The Egyptian state has adopted a comprehensive strategy to advance the energy sector within the framework of its ambitious vision to transform into a regional center for energy trade and circulation, and to attract foreign investments, taking advantage of its strategic location, the natural resources it enjoys, and the availability of new and renewable energy sources. In 7 years, local investments in the oil and gas sector increased by 391% to reach £32.9 billion in 2020 and 2021, compared to about £6.7 billion in 2014 and 15, which led to an increase in Egypt's production of natural gas by 27% to 66.3 billion cubic meters this year, compared to 52.2 billion cubic meters in 2014. Where the World Bank praised what Egypt is doing in the field of energy, which contributed to boosting Egyptian exports of natural gas and enhancing the supply of the electricity sector, as well as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which confirmed that Egypt is taking rapid steps to become a regional energy center and a global player in the energy industry, thanks to the huge discoveries and continuous development of energy resources. As for Forbes magazine, it considered that the Sustainable Energy Plan and the ongoing strategy for economic reform, as well as the discovery of the Zohr field, are all steps that indicate that the Egyptian economy will become one of the 10 largest global economies within the next 10 years. In 7 years, the petroleum sector succeeded in signing 99 agreements to search for oil and gas, and 375 new discoveries were made, as well as 29 gas field development projects and 16 crude oil projects with a total investment of $33.2 billion. Before the end of 2021, Engineer Tariq Al-Mullah, Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, and David Chi, Vice President of the American company Apache, signed an agreement on research, exploration, development and production works in the concession areas in the western desert of Egypt, amounting to $3.5 billion. Among the most prominent giant projects in the oil and gas sector are the Zohr field development projects, which produces more than 3 billion cubic feet of gas per day, the Noras field, the development projects with a production rate of 1.2 billion cubic feet of gas per day, and the project to restore production from the offshore Hilal field in the Gulf of Suez, with a target production of 5,000 barrels of crude oil per day. Complete stability of the local market has also been achieved, as all the needs of citizens and the various sectors of the state of petroleum products and natural gas were covered, with 532 million tons of petroleum and gas products, and 1,159 car refueling stations and 240 new centers for the distribution of butane cylinders were operated. In parallel with the expansion of petroleum discoveries, the petrochemical industry rose, so the Mako expansion project was implemented in Damietta to add 1.4 million tons of urea annually, and 7.9 billion is invested in 3 ongoing projects are the Red Sea Petrochemical Complex. Refining projects witnessed a major boom as 7 projects were implemented with investments exceeding $5 billion, most notably the diesel and gasoline production complex at the Egyptian refinery in Mustarad with a production capacity of 4.7 million tons per year, the INRAP project for the production of high-octane gasoline in Alexandria with a production capacity of 700,000 tons of gasoline per year, and a project production of high-octane gasoline at the Asyut refinery with a production capacity of 800,000 tons of gasoline per year. The mining sector also witnessed unprecedented investment activity as 3.7 million ounces of gold and silver dollars were sold at a value of $4.5 billion, and 59.4 million tons of ores were produced from mineral products mineral wealth projects, in addition to signing contracts for research and exploration for gold and minerals with 11 Egyptian and international companies with an investment of $57 million. The Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources also succeeded in establishing the Iqat Gold Mining Company and announcing the start of implementing an ambitious plan for early production of commercial gold detection in the Iqat area in the Eastern Desert. The discovery that was made in the Iqat area is promising and heralds positive results that increase Egypt's production of gold, in light of the presence of a reserve estimated at more than 1 million ounces of gold at a minimum, and with total investments exceeding the $1 billion barrier.
Back again with Mr. Osama Mourad and talking the changes that are happening well as the world is reeling under the COVID-19. And of course, at the end of the year, actually the beginning of the year, we just have to check and look back at the results of the work and the circumstances that took place. So also, you know, like when you talked about the e-commerce and, well, before going to the e-commerce and all that, you know, like, with all the efforts that are done, with the development that we are seeking and the quantum leap that is achieved, but then yet we do have a booming population that has to be controlled. Otherwise, it's absorbing anything, any kind of development that is taking place.
Well, it's a good point you raise, especially at this year's previous year, 2021. So the first tackling of the excessive population growth, whereby the president several times addressed the nation that efforts will be made, and actually measures were made in December where people who get more children will be disqualified from the supply subsidies.
Yeah.
So it's now more of the Chinese model where you penalize people for having children, or they have to bear their own
expenses,
costs.
definitely,
Yes,
definitely.
their own costs. So it has to be controlled. But on the other hand, this population growth is also fueling the domestic demand. So it's an issue which has to be balanced. But definitely the rate of growth now, which is almost 3%, is excessive. Although anything on the 2% or lower seems more healthier for the nation and also for the people.
Well, you know, you said also, you know, that the government invited the private sector to just, you know, take part, definitely, not to be afraid of this. But then, you know, we do have also big projects, and we have decent life, and we have, you know, lots of things that the state is bearing huge expenses, actually. And of course, you know, if there is some kind of cooperation with the private sector, that would be a great relief. You know, it would be equitable.
It's not only a relief. advocates of the private sector, and I belong to them. And history has shown that the state is a great catalyst in initiating projects, but it cannot run projects on a long-term basis. Once any state runs a project on a long-term basis, the quality deteriorates, the prices might not be viable, the projects become uneconomical, and it's all paid from the taxpayers' money and makes the country less efficient. So to stay competitive and be on the forefront of nations and achieve the targets we want for 2030 and to be among the 30 biggest economies in the world, we have to move more to the private sector. And we've done this before in modern history, where in the period from 1980 to 2010, we've transferred the economy to the private sector, that the private sector had a 70% share of the economy. We are now back to where the state has almost 70% of GDP contribution, and a more dangerous sign that we have to address, and the president addressed them himself, that the new projects, the entrepreneurs are registering their companies outside Egypt. So we have many companies in transportation, in food, in fintech, which are the growing new era businesses, are registering outside of Egypt. Also, they're fully Egyptian projects. So we will see, it seems, rumors are, we'll see a cabinet change with a different mindset, with a more economic approach, less than a brick and mortar build housing construction approach, to address these issues, to attract investments domestically and internationally. Especially there is lots of demand, but investors are afraid because of the different regulations, of the approach, of the intervention of the states, of competing on a non-fair or not the same playing field ground. And then also the issue of flotation of the pound, because officially we're floating, but it's kind of a administratively organized exchange. There's no problem now, but with the deficit we have a structural deficit because Egypt imports more than it exports, $2 to $3 billion a month. So at the point in time, this will create pressure on the Egyptian pound.
Well, with the grey economy, this is a very important thing. You know, there's a lot of money there. How can this be incorporated? It's time to incorporate it somehow, you know, in the mainstream economy.
Well, the government and the central bank and the Financial Regulatory Authority are doing tremendous efforts for financial inclusion. So we have seen since COVID started an exemption or a decrease in fees in bank account opening, in transfers, in ATM deposits and withdrawals, a huge expansion in smart wallets, a huge focus and expansion by the banks, the large, the small, and the medium, of getting people online opening their account, benefits to SME. Central bank has done several initiatives for the small enterprises and medium enterprises, giving them lower interest rates, subsidizing them in order to fuel and stimulate them. So there's lots of effort being done to attract the small and medium businesses to grow there, but it takes time, and also in order for a small and medium to flourish and believe, they have to see the big businesses also doing well, because they all dream and aspire to be big businesses at some time.
Well, definitely, you know, like also, you know, there are some fears of some businesses to report the amount of what they produce. Maybe, you know, they just don't really sell much, but then, you know, if they just do approach, we have here, you know, the taxes, they just, like, give them, they'll cut the backs, you know, sometimes it happens, you know, it happened in so many instances with different businesses, and they're scared of this. So how come, you know, can we avoid such practices?
There was an initiative, and it's still ongoing, by the Ministry of Finance and by Social Solidarity to have a fixed amount of taxes for SMEs and micro businesses. But till now, the mechanism did not operate well.
Yeah.
It's there, but maybe needs more promotion, more awareness to attract people more to come into the official system. Very successful on the other side. The tax regime is really following people not to be excluded outside of the system. So with moving that everybody has to be registered, all the companies, on electronic billing, on VAT, it's more and more being captured that we have people avoiding there. And this enabled the state also to drive the budget deficit down from the critical 10% to the 7.9% we are currently at.
Well, also like the system that is, like that things that are happening with the e-commerce, the education, and working from home, it became a norm that is followed. We got used to things that we did not know before. Now like. There are this shopping, online more than going shopping. But then you also shop, in big malls, open. How is it? Are we going to reach the point that we're not going to have malls? Everything will happen online.
Not now in Egypt, because the share of e-commerce is still small. But we can always say that Egypt is behind, with several years behind the more advanced economies, where we have seen a stagnation of expansion of malls. People are moving more to e-commerce. But we have seen already in Egypt a slowing demand for office space as people move more to working from home, working online, part-time or full-time. So it is slowly moving there. So no long-term investor would invest more in brick and mortar commercial or administrative space, but furthermore in small spaces. And it's also a phenomena globally, what we call urbanization, whereby we expect people to move more and more towards cities. And that's why demand for housing in cities is growing, but with smaller spaces to be more affordable rather than bigger flats.
Are we going to, adopting these norms due to extenuating circumstances like the Omicron, the COVID-19, and so on and so forth? Could we go back to what we were before, or there is no going back? We adopted.
There is no going back. It's a new era. I believe that 2022, or hope, will see the end of COVID and its variants as a pandemic.
Yeah.
It will be a normal epidemic.
Like a flu?
Like a flu, like the swine flu still existing,
Yes.
the bird flu still existing, and so on, but not as a pandemic. The critical factor which will affect the world, or people are waiting or always measure, is travel. Travel, airports, and so on. When will the skies and the airports be open for international travel to boost tourism, but also to increase trade, exhibitions, and so on? But we've seen successful models. I mean, Dubai is going ahead with the Expo, and it's working and it's operating well. We've seen other countries operating well, and we've seen countries like the UK, France, and Germany closing down regions and so on because of the phenomenal growth in Omicron cases. So it's really, we're tapping in unknown waters, and which also always needs tactical management, because could wake up one day and the whole world changed. I mean,
Definitely.
we all still remember
Very fast changes
like,
right now.
like it was yesterday, March 2020. We all got a vacation because there was this huge Chinese dragon thunderstorm, and then suddenly we were at home for 3 months, 6 months. Some people did not go to physical work since then. So kids, lots of kids have missed 3 semesters physical schooling, which affects their social skills, their upbringing. So there
Of
needs
course.
to be an address of how people will integrate if we get into the normality.
Of course.
Because, and we've seen this in lots of schools which don't have uniforms, in the private schools, where kids go back to school, but they go into their almost sleepwear because they're used to wearing sleepwear all the time.
Yeah.
Some people have gained weight due to less exercise, due to going out. So there's lots of adaptability needed, both from government, states, but also from businesses and people, because it's not an issue which came and will pass. No,
Yeah.
it's an era change. It's a complete change. We will live a new life. And
this
it
is-
started already. We live a new life where we will transform more to online. With 5G, the world will be more connected. We will live in virtual spaces. We'll be able to hold virtual meetings, not online meetings, where we actually sit together and shake hands and sign papers.
We had new things, a webinar, there was like, seminar became a webinar, we had lots of
So
changes.
it's a different world where we all need to adapt. But we've also seen in the region drastic changes in social norms. I mean, 2020, if we look at our two major supporters and friends, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia is opening up tremendously.
The opposite
socially
of what was.
and socially and entertainment. It's now becoming a competitor in terms of tourism. The Emirates
Exactly.
is doing the same, and the Emirates changed their weekend to like the rest of the world, and changed the work week to a 4.5 days working week, because it's not the time spent at the office rather than productivity. So we've seen tactical approaches by different neighboring, competing and friendly countries in the region, but still the main headline for 2021 is the coronavirus and its different variants. We hope that the Omicron is the last variant, but there could be.
We hope they don't come out, with different epidemics and stuff like that. This is, it seems like it's going to be a mode of living or something like this.
Especially that it's a very doubtful time, because we've been advised by the WHO and by doctors for the vaccination,
Yeah.
and people felt safe having the second vaccine. And then people start to get infected.
Yeah.
So we're now moving into booster shots and 3 and 4, and you can mix and match vaccines. So it does not sound very scientific, rather than a trial and error approach, where people also, they don't acknowledge, are internally confused.
Yeah. What did we learn here in Egypt from the situation that happened for 2 years right now? And, things, are changing. But what did we learn
I
from
always
all
try
that?
to see the positive thing, even in bad news. I think the coronavirus and the actions helped us a lot in managing business hours, helped us a lot in education. Egypt has a tremendous shortage in physical schooling abilities, and coronavirus and the full rollout of online education has made the government and the state announce that we will never go back to normal 100% physical schooling. Online will be there.
Part of the curriculum.
Part of the curriculum will be always online, because it's actually helped the issue. Finance and banking, tremendous boost for those sectors. Online commerce is growing phenomenally in Egypt now. We're coming from very low rates,
Yeah.
but it's growing from everywhere. Food delivery and so on is growing. So we have businesses growing. Residential retail is growing due to population growth. So there are sectors which are growing, and this caused the 3% increase in GDP despite the population growth. And also, there is not one single respectable economic or financial institution which has not praised Egypt's resiliency to the pandemic, because other developing countries are suffering a lot, while in Egypt we can't say we're suffering, but we're doing well. We're not doing as well as we wish or as we could without the pandemic, but we're still doing reasonably well.
Well, we don't have much time, so what would you like to see for the future, for Egypt, and for the world definitely, but Egypt?
Well, I think we missed only the single most important announcement in Egypt was the abolishment of the emergency law, which I saw as a hindrance to attracting investment. So I think 2022 will be the year where we start to focus on attracting investment and increasing exports.
Also, you're talking about the changes. Definitely, socially speaking, the changes will affect people in their norms of living. Before, like 24/7, we were just, going in the streets. Now, like certain time, restaurants, only have delivery, and shops have to close. Otherwise, so is that kind of, getting used to new norms?
It's not only getting used, it's when shops are closing at normal human times, and the restaurants also, their business volume didn't go down. So actually, they're happy they're working less time and having the same productivity, or they're adapting, or they're expanding their business with delivery and other gathering. The only thing is that 2022 will see inflationary pressures globally and on Egypt also.
Oh, Mr. Osama, thank you very much for being with us.
Always great to be with you, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year to everybody. And as we always say, God bless Egypt, God bless Egyptians, God bless our army, our white army, our police, and our president. God bless the world. And as we quote from the Holy Quran, ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين, and from the Holy Bible, Mubarak Shabi, blessed be Egypt, my people. I'm Nabi Nazim, signing off. Goodbye for now.